It's time for the McDonald's Hendricks County Sports Show on 1610 AM XRB, xrbradio.com. Also through Audio Sports Online. I'm your host this evening, Brian Scott. I am joined by my guest host, Christopher Worley, as we welcome Avon head football coach Mark Bless to the Hendricks County Sports Show. Coach, glad to have you aboard.
Thanks. Thank you very much. It's always good to be around here.
Orioles coming off what could only be said is a very big benchmark game, playing the Noblesville Millers at Noblesville, a tough place to play. Orioles come away with the 17-11 win. And I do want to mention before I get going, this McDonald's Hendricks County Sports Show is sponsored by our title sponsor, McDonald's, College Prospects of America, and BMO Harris Bank. Again, as I mentioned, a 17-11 victory at a very, very tough place to play, and in some ways a little bit tough situation, a little bit late due to traffic, so you're probably rushing a few things, but you come away with a really big win.
Well, I was very proud of our players as well as our coaches, because I thought our coaches did a nice job of preparing our players more than just X's and O's. Our coaches did a good job all week talking about the type of environment we were going to be in. Noblesville does a super job of bringing in their whole community to the homecoming activities. And Coach Scheib, he knows how to coach football and to build players up when it's homecoming. They do the parade march and everything. And 2 years ago, I recall playing over there. They hadn't won a game, and they probably should have beat us that night because he had his players good to go and ready. So I was very proud of our coaches and our players for understanding what we needed to do once we got there.
This was going to be one of those games that a lot of people were going to look at the Hoosier Crossroads Conference. Noblesville came in, had been playing very well. They have a 3-year starter in T.C. McCarron and at quarterback, somebody that has really blossomed as that program has moved, and now as a senior has really stepped up into his role. The Millers also play very good defense.
Right.
And coming into this ball game, I kind of looked at this. The Orioles have been playing some of the best defense in the Hoosier Crossroads Conference. You've shut down some of the most prolific offenses. And though 2 of those games, you come away with losses, flip of a coin, you could easily be those could be wins. And we're talking about Westfield and Fishers, 2 very prolific offenses, 2 offenses that your defense did an excellent job with. Now you go to Noblesville, and it's been your defense that has kept you in the games and allowed the offense to help win the games.
I believe you're correct. I was, as I said, very proud of our defense. I think it was our best defensive effort of the year, if not since I've been at Avon. Our guys up front really did their job. They understood that they couldn't over-penetrate. We had to force the quarterback to stay in the pocket. And, it was a proud moment when you watch our defense getting off the ball and attacking the quarterback and everybody just kind of waiting and hanging, our 2 ends, 2 contained guys contained, and then we had the pocket push into the quarterback, and we did that numerous times. I think we had 7 sacks for minus 61 yards, and he's quite an athlete back there. He can hurt you with his feet just as much as his arm. So it was a proud moment for our coaches when our players, are able to execute and do what they needed to do.
Coach, when you talk about this Avon defense, who's your defensive coach? I'm sorry.
Our defense coordinator is Chris Bomby.
Okay, you got to be happy with the work he's done in practice. I know, in practice he's really worked hard. I just wanted to ask you, how do you develop a defense? Of course, you got to have good players to do it, but then you guys are working hard each week in practice. How do you develop a defense to improve here? And you certainly have as this season's gone on.
Well, we think a lot of that is their mental approach and their attitude to play defense. And Coach Bomby does a great job of preparing our players as well as his other coaches. Dave Ballou, who's our strength coach, he coaches our linebackers. Kyle Harkema and Scott Hibbard coach our D-line, and then Mark Shayatovich. And now Jim Wheeler's helping out with our defensive backs. But I think all of our coaches are on the same page. We're all working together, and our players have bought into our philosophy.
Defensively, as you mentioned, 7 sacks on the game, 7 quarterback hurries. So you mentioned the sacks. You were still plenty of times in the offensive backfield. Joe Belden with a pair of sacks, Chad Skaggs with a pair of sacks, and a young man that we had on just a few weeks ago, Chad Piatek, with 3 sacks. So, as they say, you're getting after him there in that game.
And, throw Mack Duffin in there, too. I think we had more than 7 sacks, actually, but that's what was recorded. But sometimes it's hard to tell if he's a scramble or if it's a run. But I'm sure Mack had probably 4 tackles for loss in that game. So, it was just and they weren't selfish about it. Everybody's doing their job, being disciplined, and you got to really reward them for that.
You also had, for the second game in a row, special teams came in, did a fantastic job. Nick Hanlon comes up, picks up the block punt, puts it in for 6. And anytime you can get a score on special teams, we've said it time and time again, games are won and lost a lot of times on special teams.
Absolutely. And Nick has a knack of blocking punts, and actually he didn't get his hand on this punt, but he forced his personal protector, the other guy came over to help, forced him into the punter. And, Nick was right on the spot, and Ryan Kelly was right there as well, and the ball bounced into Nick's arms, and he takes it in for a 10-yard score. That's awesome because, that definitely is a momentum swing play, and our players thrive on that kind of thing.
You start off that game, long, sustained drive, and as we were talking before we went on the air, Noblesville, one of the wilder places to play here in the Hoosier Crossroads Conference. As you mentioned, students are always big time there. The fan base is big time. And whenever you can get a long, sustained drive in on the opening drive, that kind of settles the crowd down.
You're right, Brian. We thought that was crucial for us to be able to get the ball open up and be able to try to, eat some clock, but move the ball down the field. And I think it was a 15-play drive, 8.5 minutes. So, that's the majority of the first quarter. We gambled a couple times and went forward on 4th and short, but we felt like we could get it. We weren't going to gamble too much, but we felt like that was crucial to keep the ball in our hands and to come away with some points. And, I think Brandon Peters managed the offense very well. Jake Higginbotham up front, our center, did a tremendous job because they run a 3-3 stack, and they bring all kinds of different stunts and movements. And communication that night was crucial, and our players did a nice job.
Of course, then you talk about hanging onto the ball and getting a long drive. David Shaw, another good game. 100 yards, very strong. We've noticed in his legs. He's approaching 800 for the year.
Yeah.
So he was an important factor in this game again.
I tell you, David really runs with a lot of authority. He gets his pads out in front of him, and he's a strong young man. He won the discus in the sectionals last year, and he's the type of guy that is going to blossom even more throwing the disc. But he's a strong guy. He understands how to be in the weight room and what to do. So we like giving him the ball, and then you throw Derek Tennant in there, and he gives you a little bit different movement style of running. And I thought Derek, busted off some nice runs for us as well.
You also, as you mentioned, Brandon Peters' stats are not going to be going to wow anybody, but the one stat that does impress me, he was 8 of 13.
Right.
So he was taking care of the ball, and for the young sophomore, he hasn't thrown an interception now in 3 games. He had 3 on the season, and 2 of them came against Southeastern and 1 against Westfield, if I'm not mistaken. So he's been a very, very smart player for your team.
Well, I think Brandon grew up a lot the first couple of games, especially the Westfield game, when he realized, his decision impacts our team. And if he tries to force something that he knows he shouldn't, I think he grew up a lot that night. And he's, like I said, he manages our offense very well. Probably the most impressive play that I saw the other night from him, we ran a little bit of trickery play. We gave the ball to Derek, and he turned around and pitched it back to Brandon. And Brandon knew immediately he couldn't go to the deep threat, and he got the ball out very quickly out to Cress out in the flat. Here's a young sophomore that typically would try to go deep. Instead, he knew that Cress was open in the flat and got the ball to him immediately for an 8-yard gain. But that was the most impressive play that I saw him make because he wasn't selfish.
You were talking about, and one of the things that we see with Brandon Peters, but overall offensive efficiency the last few games has been pretty good.
Well, I think when we eliminate our mistakes, our drive killers, jumping off sides, maybe a turnover here or there, holding penalties, when we eliminate those mistakes, we can be pretty good. And I think our players have understood that now.
You've got 7 sacks against Noblesville. Is in multiple tackles for loss. I think the stats are going to say 4, probably more than that. The 7 quarterback hurries. And then the past couple of games, we saw it also against Brownsburg. Their freshman quarterback maybe grew up a little bit in that Avon game as well. But you got some nice play out of your secondary to defend some passes.
They are coming along. I'm really proud of Gabe. Gabe always gets stuck with the best receiver, and he had a tough night defending Fisher's receiver when we played them, as well as Westfield's. But he's growing up. He's learning how to be a little more physical, playing corner, and not giving up, a pass and then tackling the guy. So he's really grown up. Obviously, David Griffith is very good back there for us. And Ryan Brantley's playing pretty good football too. Then the other corner is Andrew Griffin, and Nick Hanlon will get some rotation in with Andrew. But, we really like the growth on the secondary as well.
You saw a little bit, especially in the Brownsburg game, bringing Andrew Griffin over to the offensive side. What does he give you over there?
Right. Well, I think he's more of a true receiver. At the beginning of the year, we needed a little, some more athletic ability in the secondary. And, he was the first one that jumped up. But I think he's more of a receiver type of player for us down the road. And, he's a lot like his brother, a lot like Kendall. He understands how to run routes, how to get separation, and how to catch the ball.
You're going to face the Lafayette Jefferson Broncos this week. Broncos coming off of a loss to Brownsburg, 28-0. Talked to Coach Comer last week as he was preparing to face the Broncos, and he said, maybe they only have one win. He goes, this is by far the fastest team in the Hoosier Crossroads Conference.
Right, they have some speed. Obviously, they're 4x1. Track team won the state, and you see, 3 of those players out on the field. I believe 3. But, the quarterback, the tailback, the free safety, and probably a receiver in there are extremely fast. And we experienced that last year. And I think we learned some lessons from that loss last year. They beat us 27-30. And, we got to play defense with a lot of discipline. We can't just run in reckless abandon because they'll take advantage of that.
We know your coaching staff would never want your players to take any kind of game lightly. This is a home game against Jeff. You're 3-3. We think you've got a good chance to go 4-3. How do you guard against any kind of letdown by your players? I'm sure they're preparing for Lafayette Jeff. They know they're 1-5, so.
Chris, that's a good question. But what we have really sold our players on this week is they beat us 27-30 last year. And a lot of those players are back. Plus, it's our homecoming game, and we've preached that our job for homecoming is not to get too wrapped up in the homecoming events. That's more for the student body. Our job as a football team is to win the football game.
You talk about their speed. Darian Green on that relay team, probably one of the fastest players. Normally Jeff will run him as a tailback. He also returns kicks, and he has been one dangerous kick returner.
You're right. Now all you have to do is turn on the film, and you see it. I believe it was against HSC. He had a big return down to the 1, had another one where the ball was bobbled, and he kind of picks it up, and he just outmaneuvers everyone and gets it past the 50. So we got to make sure our kicking game that we get the ball where we need it. We want to place it a certain spot. If we want to try to kick deep and get to the end zone, we can try that as well. But our kick coverage has to be outstanding.
Matt Thompson is the quarterback for the Lafayette Jefferson Broncos. I believe he's a state champion in the 100-meter sprint on his own right.
Yeah, I believe you're right.
Very, very fast. And last week against Brownsburg, Chris and I saw Darian Green possibly with an ankle injury. It'll be interesting to see if he suits up and plays tomorrow. But then you also have to deal with a quarterback that is just as fast.
Yes, and it seems like that's a repeated pattern, doesn't it? In the HCC, there's a lot of quarterbacks that can move and throw the ball. And again, I go back to saying we got to be disciplined on defense and do our job basically. If it's contained from the outside and push the pocket, so be it. I think our players understand that. The running back you mentioned, he reminds me of the running back we had a couple years ago, Charles Davis. But he's faster than Charles, but he's got the quicks that Charles had, and he can stop on a dime and go. So we got to make sure that we plug the gaps and we're doing what we need to do up front.
Second big game, home game 2 weeks ago. It was the first game you got to play against the Bulldogs at home. Come away with an exciting win, and I know the fans were really, really excited. Now it's homecoming. What's the atmosphere going to be like?
Well, I think it'll be electrifying. Hopefully we can keep the rain away. Who knows? But I think the student body has all kinds of activities this week that helps excitement, and if we can feed off some of that energy, that's perfect for us.
We take a look, and we're 6 weeks in, going into week 7. We're going to find out in about a week or so what the sectional draw is going to be as you play these last 3 games out, getting ready for sectionals. You take it one game at a time, but you got Jeff this week. You'll be at McCutcheon, final road game, and McCutcheon tough team in the 5A. They've played very well before closing out with a perennial power. And Larry McWhorter, that team's going to be fired up for that game as Coach McWhorter's final game with the Eagles in the regular season. So just your progression as you go and get ready for sectionals.
Well, we were just talking tonight in the staff meeting after practice how quickly the season's gone. You know, we tell the players, especially our seniors, you know, tick-tock, tick-tock. The season goes quicker when you're a senior. Well, when you're my age, it goes really fast. But, yeah, you know, and I think we've made good progression as we've gone. We've grown as a team. I think we've grown tighter with our team chemistry, and that's always crucial for us, especially this time of the year. And, you know, you look at hitting the back end of the season, the final 3 regular season games going in the tournament, you know, those are big build-up games for you to try to propel yourself in the sectional.
We've been talking to the head coach of the Avon Orioles, Mr. Coach Mark Bless. You've brought a young man with us. It's going to be our College Prospect of America Athlete of the Week. Why don't you tell us a little bit about him?
Well, Mack is probably our best defensive lineman up front, and he's very versatile. He can play the nose, he can play the tackle, he can play defensive end. But probably what sets him aside from a lot of people, he's got great hands. You know, people think, well, why does a defensive lineman need good hands? Well, he doesn't get held as much because he gets his hands on the offensive guy and gets separation and does a great job of getting rid of the block. You know, very strong, very dedicated to the weight room, verbally committed this summer to Miami of Ohio. So he's got a passion and he's a driven person.
You place Mack quite often, I believe, on the strong side, so he's going to get a lot of action, especially in most opponents' running game. But and I'm going to talk to a little bit about Mack, but we were talking just a second ago about the speed in the HCC. In high school football overall, we're seeing a lot more spread offenses.
Right.
And as strong as your defensive linemen have to be, they also have to be pretty fast nowadays.
We got to be quick at least. You know, we may not be real fast in a 40, but you know, if these guys are moving 7 yards as quick as they can, that's pretty good. You know, we don't time all their 40s all the time, but for somebody like Mack, who's got great explosion off the ball, you know, Isaiah Robinson, same way. But if we timed him in a 40, it probably wouldn't be too beneficial. But like I said, you know, he's got great hands. He knows how to get off the block. He plays well. That is the head coach of the Avon Orioles, Coach Mark Bless. Coach, good luck this week against the Broncos. We'll have that game right here on Audio Sports Online pregame show, along with the Indiana Football Hall of Famer Dave Shelbourne and myself, 6:45, kickoff between the Orioles and the Broncos at 7 o'clock. Coach, good luck this week.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, when we come back, we will have our College Prospects of America Athlete of the Week, senior defensive lineman Mack Duffin. You're listening to the Hendricks County Sports Show on XRB and XRBradio.com. Right now at all Avon and Brownsburg McDonald's, you can check out the brand new Mighty Wings. Mighty Wings are hearty bone-in chicken wings that are crispy and breaded with a spicy kick. Available in 3-piece, 5-piece, or 10 pieces, a 3-piece is only $2.99 at all Avon and Brownsburg McDonald's. Are you interested in playing a sport at the collegiate level? College Prospects of Central Indiana can help you achieve this dream. Right now, thousands of college coaches are searching for athletes, but lack the resources to find them. This includes Division I, II, and III, as well as NAIA and junior colleges. College Prospects can help both male and female student athletes get the best education at the best price that allows them to continue participating in a sport they love. We do this through maximum exposure, providing you with essential tools, video, and unlimited personal guidance during the recruiting process. For complete details on all of our services, ask your local representatives, Bill Verhonick, Megan Eganoff, Joe Palizzi, or Rusty Dimer. You can also visit our website at www.collegeprospectsofcentralindiana.com or contact us at 317-650-4339. We also offer services for gifted students looking for the best fit in academics as well. College Prospects of America can help you achieve your dreams. Since 1984, BMO Harris Bank has grown to become one of the largest banks in the Midwest, serving personal, commercial, and affluent customers. Located locally at 610 West Northfield Drive in Brownsburg, we thank them for their sponsorship of the Hendricks County Coaches Show. Welcome back to the McDonald's Hendricks County Sports Show on 1610 AM XRB, xrbradio.com, and, of course, on Audio Sports Online. Along with my guest host, Christopher Worley, I'm Brian Scott. We're pleased to be joined by our College Prospects of America Athlete of the Week. It is senior defensive lineman Mack Duffin. He's a 6'4", 225-pound senior, and he's already made that commitment. He's going to play for Miami of Ohio. Mack, thanks for coming along today.
Thanks, sir. Yeah, for sure.
Big, as Coach Bless said, you've been very, very an integral part of this defense for the season. 21 tackles, 16 assists, 7 tackles for loss, a pair of sacks, and you also like to get after the quarterback a little bit.
Yes, sir.
As you got, especially in this past game against Noblesville, you had a quarterback that could be a little elusive.
Yeah, definitely. TC's a good guy. He's, quick quarterback. He's definitely a guy that can throw the ball, but he can definitely run, and I'm up front. Our responsibility, the nose and tackle. We were supposed to press the pocket, play it loose, and then kind of wait for him to run out, So we didn't really expect to get too many sacks or too many TFLs, But it's just how it goes. We gave Chad, Chad Piatek's a great guy. He's fast, definitely. So if he's going outside, then Chad Piatek has him for sure. So
we were just talking with Coach Bless, and he was talking about your strength. And as a defensive lineman, of course, it's almost critical, especially if you're playing most of the time on the strong side of the football. You're going to get a lot of the runs coming your way. But your training regimen is obviously very good for your strength. How do you work on your quickness?
I do a lot of drills in practice. We do a lot of footwork drills. Coach Blue does a great job. We come in every Friday morning at 6 o'clock, and we, during the off season, of course, and we run and do a lot of agility drills, a lot of short bursts. That's what we pride ourselves on as a D line. We may not be super fast. Our 40s may not be too impressive, but our agilities are pretty good, and that's something that we pride ourselves on for sure.
Seems like, Mac, you talk about the defensive line as a group. Like you guys are a special group, or you bond with each other pretty close. So how about that defense? I know you're looking at the whole defense too, but your defensive linemen sound like you're a close group.
Oh, yeah. We're all best friends, really. And it's the first time, I think, since I've been playing that, all the guys are friends with each other. We all hang out with each other. We're all pretty close, and we do consider ourselves as a unit. And that's just how it goes. We're pretty close, and that's just us,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You visited several schools before deciding on Miami of Ohio. I believe you got some looks from Indiana University, Cincinnati, Ball State. What was some of the main characteristics of Miami of Ohio that made you want to go there?
Well, first off, I always know that Miami was a great school academically.
Yeah.
I always knew, they had a great tradition. They had great coaches that come through there. And then, so I was kind of biased. I was like, wow, this is a great school. I went on my visit, and it just blew me away, The academics, the facilities, it's insane. And coaches, are on the right tone, and it's a team that can only go up. So, it just blew me away with my visit for sure.
Plus, Mac, like we talked about, it's a good conference for football.
Oh, yeah.
You guys are going to be playing a good, tough schedule each week. You're on TV. You're going to be playing some Big Ten schools and a big schedule too.
Oh yeah, we play a whole bunch of BCS schools. It's definitely a super competitive conference, and it's good because you see teams like Ball State, you see teams like Central Michigan always come up and they sneak around and they'll beat a Big Ten school.
Sure.
I know Akron had Michigan on the ropes, and it just shows that the MAC's very competitive. So
have you peeked at the schedule for next year?
No, I'm not. I've been too focused on our schedule
sure,
now.
Good,
but,
proud of you. That's right.
Yeah.
I seem to remember there's a certain alum of Miami of Ohio that does pretty well in the NFL nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
And
Big Ben, for sure.
We're talking about Ben Roethlisberger, the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. You finally got to play for the first time at home in the big Brownsburg rivalry game. How was that?
It was great. We always played Brownsburg at home, or we played them in the dome or at the stadium. And it was a great game. Our fans came out. It's kind of it's kind of like the Hendricks County Super Bowl. If you want to call it like that. It's a huge deal, and it was fun. We know the Brownsburg guys pretty well. They're about 7 miles away from us, so it was a good game to beat them. And they're a great group of guys for sure.
Now you've got up for one big game, and now you got homecoming this week.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
you're going to be facing a couple of speedsters, and, of course, one of the guys you're going to have to look to contain is quarterback Matt Thompson of Lafayette Jefferson. You got a chance to look at him and what he brings?
Yeah, he's a fast guy. He can do stuff with his feet. He's a Ball State commit and definitely a guy that's on everybody's radar. Last year, he had some runs against us, and this year, our main emphasis is just boxing him in. It's who we call caging the rats. So it's a good deal for us.
Now, Mac, on Friday nights, do you have anything you like to do to really get ready, after school, a couple hours before the game? What do you guys try to do, or what do you especially like to do to get yourself pumped up? Probably doesn't take much, but how do you get yourself ready to play a big game on Friday night here?
Well, as a group, I think we try to stay loose and stay calm, not get way too excited. I see some guys get way too excited for the game, and they come out loose. For us in the past, we've had trouble starting the game. We've been slow off the gates. So now, we have kind of a technique where we try to just stay loose and relax, and then when the first 5 minutes comes, that's when you rise to the punch. So,
you're playing defensive lineman right now. Have you played any other positions as you played football?
Yes, sir. Sophomore year, I was a tight end. I played some reps on varsity at tight end, and then they moved their defense, so that's what they needed. So
now you got a preference on which side of the ball? I know you're going to go to Miami of Ohio, and you're going to be on that defensive line. But do you want to be on that other side of the ball, still catching a pass or two?
Oh yeah, I loved offense. I love blocking and stuff like that. Talked to my coaches something about it, but they want to keep me on defense to keep me safe. They don't get me hurt on offense or anything.
Coach said you got good hands. I bet you could catch a few balls.
That was my problem on offense. So I was the blocking tight end. Yeah. Okay.
We've been joined by Mack Duffin, senior defensive lineman. He has been our College Prospects of America Athlete of the Week. Mack, good luck against the Broncos this week. We look forward to seeing you.
Thanks, sir.
All righty. We are going to now, Chris Worley and I, we're going to take a look at some of these games. And before we go to break, we are going to talk about what we see coming up in this Avon Lafayette Jefferson game. Of course, Chris Worley and I, last week we happened to be in Lafayette Jefferson. We had the Brownsburg versus Lafayette Jeff game. And Chris, let's look first on the Lafayette Jeff side. We both saw Matt Thompson. We both saw Darian Green. We also saw their wideout Tim Wilson, who also is a bit of a speeder. For the Broncos, the pluses, they're fast. They're very fast. The one thing we did notice last week, and Coach Bless touched on it, Darian Green, he was injured in the first quarter. Yeah. We believe it was an ankle sprain. Worked their tails off trying to get him back into the game. Was very surprised with him down 21-0 to actually see him come back in the game in the fourth quarter. Had a couple of nice runs, but just really not that effective. But one of the things I think we both are going to agree on, we saw a Brownsburg Bulldog defense that, let's face it, they haven't been the greatest this year. They came into that game, haven't recorded an interception all year. They come away with 4 picks, and while the 4 picks are impressive, it was the pressure that defensive line put on the Jeff offense that was really impressive.
Correct, and that was by far Brownsburg's best defensive game of the year, and that's why I'm looking at Lafayette Jeff here at Avon. And if Brownsburg can shut them out, and I would say Avon's defense is so far, especially these last few weeks, been much better. I don't see Avon giving up many points here at all to Lafayette Jeff. And we don't know if the young man, Darian Green can come back. But that shows you how much Jeff needed him, that they were willing to put him back in there with that severely taped up ankle. But I would expect that he'll start. He's had a week of training, so he'll come in here. And as we heard Coach Bless say, they'll be aware of that good speed. I expect Avon to get this done, though, and I expect their defense to – I wouldn't imagine them allowing more than 10, 13 points in this game to Lafayette Jeff.
Darian Green is the second leading rusher in the Hoosier Crossroads Conference with on the season 919 yards. He averages over 6 yards a carry. Only Nate Deno from McCutcheon, and that's pretty much McCutcheon's main offensive threat, has a few more yards. But as we look at Avon, their running backs aren't too bad. You've got David Shaw, third in the HCC with 779 yards. And while we saw Derek Tennant, he had to serve a 4-game suspension, and we were a little surprised in that Brownsburg game. We saw Coach Bless bring him in. He contributed immediately. And if you look at Noblesville, David Shaw, 17 carries for 65 yards. Derek Tennant, 16 carries for 82 yards. A really good 1-2 punch. And what we're going to see, the Jeff defensive line was pretty sound. It's going to be that Avon defensive line against a very, very young Broncos defensive line looking to get pressure on Matt Thompson.
Right, and as we mentioned, that Lafayette Jeff offensive line had trouble with the Brownsburg front. Mack Duffin and all them put a good rush and put pressure on their quarterback, so I would expect definitely more of the same, if not better, from Avon. And also, like you mentioned, now they have 2 running back threats. We're used to seeing David Shaw carry a big load for them. Now Tennant's coming in there and giving them a boost at running back. Also, of course, Crest Kimbrough, always a weapon. He's 3rd in the HCC in receptions, 434 total yards, and he's got that fast, deep threat. So they've got some speed working the other way, and as we've seen, Brandon Peters will try and find Kimbrough just to at least get that threat of going deep on you if these 2 running backs aren't running you to death.
We saw Matt Johnson throw the ball against the Bulldogs, and at times was successful. Fair enough. He had some receivers drop, just plain drop several. I can think of a couple of fly routes down the sidelines. Their wide receiver, Tim Wilson, had few just go right through his fingers. Could be a different game if he catches a couple of those. But for the Orioles, it's really going to be containing Matt Johnson. He's not the best thrower. And what we saw against Brownsburg quite often, it was the Brownsburg defensive front flushing him out of the pocket, making him throw on the run. He was fairly inaccurate, is to say is an understatement. Caleb Cooley, Brownsburg's defensive back, came away with 2 interceptions and a very, very critical one when the Bulldogs were up 14-0 in the end zone. So for the Avon Orioles, it's all going to be about pressure on Matt Johnson and this Broncos offense, and if they can bottle up Darian Green. We saw last week when Green was out of the game, the Broncos really didn't have much. They were forced to bring in Johnson. The Broncos brought in their backup quarterback, Brandon Golick, ran him at quarterback, and then put Matt Johnson either at a wing or a wide receiver trying to run a few jet sweeps.
To get him some touches and use his speed. But I think Avon will – the defensive coaches, they've been outstanding here recently. We heard Coach Bless talk about them. I think they'll be studying and they'll be ready for this. And as far as any kind of letdown, Coach Bless, he addressed that. I don't expect to see any kind of a letdown against a lesser opponent, if you will, in the 1-5 Lafayette Jeff Broncos here. So, to me, this looks good for Avon to get a homecoming win here this week.
Avon, it is homecoming. They have won their last 2, against Brownsburg and Noblesville. And as Coach Bless says, last year they lost to Lafayette Jeff. That game was up at Jeff. I was broadcasting that game, and that was a game the Orioles really felt they were going to win. Now, last year Avon a little inconsistent during last season, but they went to Jeff. Jeff, with a very spirited game, came away with the victory. We know that the Orioles will definitely be looking to get a little payback on that game as they get ready for the final few games here of the regular season. When we come back, Chris and I will have the rest of the Hendricks County school schedules. This is the McDonald's Hendricks County Sports Show on XRB. Right now at all Avon and Brownsburg McDonald's, you can check out the brand new Mighty Wings. Mighty Wings are hearty bone-in chicken wings that are crispy and breaded with a spicy kick. Available in 3-piece, 5-piece, or 10 pieces, a 3-piece is only $2.99 at all Avon and Brownsburg McDonald's. Are you a high school student athlete who would like to play at the next level, but are confused and unfamiliar with the college recruiting process? There is good news. College Prospects of America can help. We have been helping athletes get recruited since 1986. Right here in Central Indiana, we have representatives who offer personal and professional guidance to both male and female student athletes. Call us today at 317-650-4339 to learn all about recruiting and how we can help. You only have one chance to get recruited. Act now. Contact College Prospects of America at 317-650-4339. Since 1984, BMO Harris Bank has grown to become one of the largest banks in the Midwest, serving personal, commercial, and affluent customers. Located locally at 610 West Northfield Drive in Brownsburg, we thank them for their sponsorship of the Hendricks County Coaches Show. Welcome back to the McDonald's Hendricks County Sports Show on 1610 AM XRB, xrbradio.com, and, of course, on Audio Sports Online. This week we are in Avon at the McDonald's on Rockville Road, one kind of right in front of Meyer. Alongside me is my guest host, Christopher Worley. We're taking a look at other action involving Hendricks County schools, and we'll start right off with the Brownsburg Bulldogs. Bulldogs snapped a 4-game losing streak, as we just mentioned, defeating the Lafayette Jefferson Broncos by the score of 28-0. The offense for Coach Brett Comer, I'm sure he's happy about getting the 28 points. But when we talk about breakout games usually in sports, we're usually thinking of a quarterback, a running back, a wide receiver. This was a breakout game for the Bulldog defense.
No doubt. We could go through a list of their defensive players, and I think just about everybody on the defense had a big impact play at one time or another. So just an outstanding defense job for them to get a shutout. I know they were happy. The defense has been a sore point so far this year, giving up 28 points a game. So to go in there on the road at Lafayette Jeff and get that shutout, I know that was big for them.
Coach Brett Comer's defense had 4, maybe 5 sacks against Matt Johnson last week. Again, we don't know what kind of effect that game would have had if Darian Green would have been healthy for that whole game. But the one thing that was noticed was against that young Lafayette Jefferson deep offensive line, it was the Bulldogs' defensive line that really manhandled them all game long, and then they had great play in the secondary. 4 interceptions. The Bulldogs went into that game without having a single pick all season long. By the end of the night, they had 4 picks. They also pretty much doubled their sack total in one game. So it really was a defensive coming out party for the Bulldogs for head coach Brett Comer. Offensively, not too shabby. Toxack and Rabati, 121 yards. Devontae Allen, 92. You look at a couple of huge runs. I think it was Devontae Allen with like a 47-yard run. We saw Toxack and Rabati with about a 54-yard run. Both of them basically exploded, got around the corner, and they were long gone.
Yeah, and we saw that Brownsburg offense expanded a little bit last week. We kind of expected they may throw in a few more exotic plays. They didn't actually need them. They did run a reverse in this game, but pitch to Devontae Allen. I think actually, Brian, he had an over 70. I think it was for 78 yards. He had a TD run. So Devontae's proven to be a threat now. So as they develop this freshman quarterback, Hunter Johnson, you're going to see the offense open up a little bit more, and I would expect that to be the case this week too. They may be able to run even some more different kind of plays, some things we haven't seen against the Harrison defense, which of course has struggled this year as they're 0-6.
Yeah, actually the Bulldogs had a couple of very nice runs. I remember one by Vincent Lisbon that was ended up being called back on a penalty. But for head coach Brett Comer, this was a very, very impressive game against Lafayette Jeff. They rack up over 298 yards on the ground. Didn't have to throw the ball a whole lot. They were able to use a lot of ball control. Penalties, well, that's something that Coach Comer is going to want to work on. But a very, very aggressive defense against a Lafayette Jeff offensive line that was simply young and overmatched. The Bulldogs now, well, they are home, and it is homecoming. You're going to find it's homecoming through a lot of schools. And for the Bulldogs, well, if you want to get a little bit better and you want to, pack up another win on homecoming night, unfortunately, for the Harrison Raiders, they're coming into Brownsburg at probably just the wrong time. Harrison has now lost 33 in a row, and they're going to come in and face a Bulldogs team high as a kite after that win. Harrison, they run for Brownsburg, it's going to look familiar because Harrison runs the flex bone. They just don't have the weapons that the Brownsburg Bulldogs do. They have a very good, a very capable quarterback in Jake Lasky, but he has been pretty much the soul of their offense. Harrison comes into this game averaging less than 10 points a game, and defensively they're giving up almost 33 points a game.
Right. So, the scheduling gods looked good on Brownsburg's homecoming. When we looked at the schedule at the start of the year and saying, hey, who do they have for homecoming? I'm sure everybody smiled when it was Harrison. But, as we talked about with Avon, I don't think there's going to be any problem here with Brownsburg letting down against a weaker opponent. They need wins. They're 2-4 coming into this game. So they know that, and the kids are going to be excited after last week's 28-0 win at Lafayette Jeff. So they're feeling good this week. They're happy around the school building. The kids are all talking about, hey, you guys won. Good job, good job. So I expect that to continue this week. I'm sure they'll be 100% ready for this game.
Bulldogs, of course, right now well out of the mix for Hoosier Crossroads Conference title, but want to build up momentum over these final 3 games. They have 2 games at home of the last 3. They'll have Harrison this week. Then they'll have to go their traditional rival at Zionsville, and then they'll follow up with currently the co-leaders in the HCC, following up with Fishers. We talked to Coach Mark Bless of the Avon Orioles just a little bit ago about how much of a meat grinder this sectional. You're going to have Pike, Ben Davis, Avon, and Brownsburg. Right now, Avon, Pike, and Ben Davis all look to be pretty strong. But if Brett Comer's defense can start playing like the way they did against Jeff, and we know that they've got some weapons offensively in Toksak and Rabati, Devontae Hunter is coming along very nicely. And Vincent Lisman, if they can get him on a couple of jet sweeps and around the corner, Bulldogs could cause some make some waves here come sectionals.
You know, they have added Vincent Lisman as an offensive weapon, number 83. He's got, total yards coming in, just 71 this year, but 6.5 average. He's caught some passes, too. He's a small guy, but if they can get him open, get him the ball in some open spaces, he's proved he's got speed and running ability. So, yes, they just need to get off to a good start in this game against Harrison and not let down. You know, I did look at that schedule at Zionsville. Brownsburg, everybody's talked about it before the season. You know, they were 9-0 last year in the regular season. And guess what the one loss was? The first game of sectionals to Zionsville. So everybody has got that game circled. They don't want to look ahead. They're not going to look past Harrison but because they're so desperate for wins. But you see that at Zionsville game, and then, boy, there's no team tougher in this conference than Fishers, and they'll have them at home to close out the season.
Bulldogs over the last 15 years, 14-1 in this series. We expect it to go to 15-1. The Plainfield Quakers, they're going to look for a bounce back after falling to a Decatur Central team. Chris and I talked about this on last week's McDonald's Hendricks County Sports Show. The Decatur Central Hawks, they can put up points, and they can put them up with the best of them. Talking to Coach Brian Woodard earlier this week on his coach's podcast. This was a tight game through the first half. It was 14-14 against Decatur Central, and the Quakers actually took a 21-14 lead. But, as they say, turnovers will kill you, and the Quakers had a couple of picks, a fumble, and just that quick, Decatur Central rattles off some points. They end up winning this game 48-28. For the Quakers, they did get some nice running from Jacob Maple. He had 150 yards on the day. And passing, Brady Nichols, well, not one of his better games, 4-13 for only 43 yards. Plainfield's going to look to get back into the game. As I talked to Coach Woodard earlier this week, he said, facing Decatur Central, wide open spread, bang, 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 bang. He said when they were able to slow Decatur Central down a bit, he thought they could play very well. In that second half, Decatur Central got off to those fast snaps, and they just simply couldn't keep up.
Yeah, that's right. And really it was 2 plays in that that were a big factor in that game, or else Plainfield could have kept it close and maybe kept the ball and kept DC from scoring. They had one fumble. They went forward also on a 4th down and missed that. So a couple plays really turned that game around. Also for Plainfield, Josh Miller is a big play guy for them. He's been doing some good things and giving them some offense. This game against Franklin, Franklin comes in at 4-2. I looked a little bit at Franklin's schedule, and they're coming off a nice win against a Mooresville team. They won that game 39-9. Franklin started the year with 3 straight wins, and all big time, over Seymour at Shelbyville, and then Indianapolis Howe lost 2 straight, and then the win against Mooresville last week. So Franklin's a good team. I have this highlighted as my big game of the Hendricks County schools this week as a pretty even game, 4-2 Quakers against 4-2 Franklin Grizzly Cubs.
It is the Quakers' homecoming this week, and talking to Coach Woodard, he said some of the things you're going to see differently with Franklin. Franklin likes to do a lot more ball control, but he said the one thing that the Quakers are going to have to watch out for is this Grizzly Cub defense. They're only allowing about 15 points a game, and Coach Woodard said this team loves to blitz. They said they will send the kitchen sink if they can, and it is something that the Quakers are really going to have to watch out for. You're going to have to watch. They're going to have a very good game out of Brady Nichols, making sure he can get rid of the ball, not take too many sacks. If they can get a ground control game going, I think Coach Woodard believes that the Quakers could win this game. This is over the last 15 years. This has been a one-sided affair with Plainfield heavily 14-1 over these last 15 years. Wow. But watch out for the Grizzly Cubs. This could be a year that they could come back and upset the Quakers. Danville will travel to Southmont, and for Coach Russ Sumner, it's not been the best of years. They played a spirited game against undefeated Lebanon, but they came away the losers 10-2. Couple of triples down the line for Lebanon on that game, but Danville's only points of the game came on a safety. They held Lebanon scoreless for 3 quarters. Defensively, Coach Russ Sumner's got to be very happy with that. But the problem for Danville all season long has been offense. They haven't scored points. Defensively, like I said, Coach Sumner's got to be tickled. They've been giving up almost 33 points per game, and they held a very, very good Lebanon team to only 10.
You know, really, if you look at Danville, the last 2 weeks, they've played tough competition. 3A Western Boone, they lost 24-27. And then Lebanon, undefeated Lebanon at 6-0, they only got the safety, but only gave up 10 points. So that's true. Now, they're going to play Southmont this week at Southmont. We don't hear a lot about Southmont. They're a 2A school that is in Crawfordsville. Southmont 3-3. The only notes I have on them is, they are scoring not too much, just over 20 points a game, giving up 26.5. They lost to Lebanon in a common opponent 8-34, but it was 8-8 at halftime. It was 8-8 after 3 quarters, so all of Lebanon's points came in the fourth quarter. But I don't know if Danville can get this win or not. I would see Southmont prevailing here.
And one of the interesting side note in this the Lebanon-Danville game, it was 10-2. There was not an offensive touchdown in this game. Lebanon's only touchdown came on a punt return. They got a field goal, but otherwise a punt return and a Danville safety. Kind of an odd way to see scoring in that game. And, of course, Lebanon was able to kick a 28-yard field goal to close out their scoring in the first quarter. So we'll see if Coach Russ Sumner's team can come back against the Mounties. Coach Desson Hannon is 37-34 in his 7th year at the helm of Southmont. They're coming off of a loss to the Western Boone Stars, 35-14. The Mounties, they're a 2A school. They've played a little bit all across the board. They've played some 1A schools. They've 2A, 3A, 4A, you name it. They've played it. And Danville, well, they've lost 3 in a row. They're going to look to maybe turn that around. For Danville, their final 3 games, 2 on the road before they finally come home to end the season with North Montgomery.
Right. One strong note about Danville, though. They had a big performance last game from Autry Pickens, who had 96 yards on 27 carries. So they gave the ball to the big running back a lot last week. He almost got 100 yards. They'll need a big performance like him to pull off this win at Southmont this week. Big
rivalry game. Tri-West is at Western Boone this week. This has always been a big rivalry game. These two schools not separated by pretty much more than 10 miles, very similar to what you see with Avon and Brownsburg. The Bruins, after a slow start, well, they won their last 3. They defeated Frankfort 48-20 last week, and a Frankfort team that is still looking, I believe, for their first win of the season. Tri-West got on the board early as they got a 33-yard run to begin that game, and then they pretty much did a very good job on the ground, 23 carries for 295 yards on the game, as they had Jalen Hendershot with 107 yards. Kyle Cook had 69 yards in that game, and Colton Jobe, he had the first touchdown of the game. He also rushed for 83 yards. The Bruins, they didn't need a lot of passing. They were 12-22 for 135 yards, but they controlled the line of scrimmage. Probably the one thing Chris Cole is not going to be too happy about. The Bruins committed 9 penalties for 115 yards, but they had no problem with Frankfort winning 48-21. They'll take on a Western Boone team that year in and year out, it seems, especially since they've made the jump to 3A, has been one of the stronger teams, and they come in off of a win against Southmont 35-14. And Coach Justin Pelly, in just his first year as a head coach at Western Boone, has them playing very well.
Yeah, Justin Pelley's been with Brownsburg before on that staff, but they've won 3 straight games. They're hot. One at Crawfordsville, one at Danville handily. Well, that was a close game, I'm sorry. But they won at Crawfordsville 55-9, and then, as you mentioned, the win against Southmont last week. So the Wevo game for Tri-West, that's always a big one. This high-scoring big play offense Tri-West has been featuring with their great quarterback, Jake Hendershot. He's carrying a big load for them this year. He's passed for 1,277 yards so far this year, and he's also rushed for 467 yards and 9 TDs rushing, thrown for 7 TDs. So Hendershot, the big star of the Tri-West offense, if they can pile up some points here again in this big rivalry game, I look for them to get the win.
Final game that we'll take a look at, Cascade Cadets. Well, they suffered their second loss of the season, and I think Chris and I we kind of foreshadowed this a little bit last week. Anytime the Speedway Sparkplugs play a Hendricks County school, for some reason they always do well.
Yeah, they're awful tough at home, always have been, and that was the case here again. They're just a tough challenge for anybody to play, especially at home.
The Sparkplugs defeated the Cadets by the score of 40-13. Speedway at 324 yards on the ground as Justin Brent carried the ball for 136 yards. They had a trio of over 50, or they had several players with over 50, Bobby Spears, Shannon Hall, and Andrew Fritz. So the Sparkplugs, they were plugging along on the ground. And for Cascade, well, they just really couldn't find much offensively. Only 188 total yards compared to Speedway's 430. We were actually hoping to get Coach Jason Thompson on the show this week. Hopefully before the season ends, we'll get him there. The Cascade Cadets still have played a very, very good football this year. They are now 4-2, and they are going to take on a 2-4 Edgewood team. I believe this is also Cascade's homecoming game. The Mustangs of Edgewood, after losing 4 straight, they got a win last week against West Vigo by the score of 33-12. As Coach Jerry Bland's team, as we mentioned, 2-4, a 3A school coming in to play the Cadets.
Right. Edgewood has played low-scoring games for the most part. They broke out on offense last week, but they're averaging just over 17 points a game, giving up just over 18. But I think after that loss, Coach Thompson and his staff are really going to be working hard this week. It's Cascade's homecoming. I bet you they'll be ready here, and I expect them to get this job done this week and get a win against Edgewood at home here for their homecoming. Quarterback Sawyer Donovan, he's been great this year, but he struggled big time against that Speedway defense, so I expect them to get back on track here this week.
All right, I'm joined by my guest host, Christopher Worley, and as we wind down this edition of the McDonald's Hendricks County Sports Show, let's take a look at some of the conference standings, and we'll go right to the Hoosier Crossroads Conference at first. We have co-leaders at the top of the HCC. One of them, well, you might have expected it. That's the Fishers Tigers. They are 5-1 on the year, and they're coming off of a big win. They're coming off of a win against McCutcheon last week by the score of 47-28. The other co-leader is one that probably at the beginning of the season not a lot of people would have expected, and that's the Westfield Shamrocks. How big was Westfield's win last week against Hamilton Southeastern? Well, the Shamrocks came away with a 38-18 win. That vaulted them to number 1 in Class 5A. Congratulations to the Shamrocks. That's a team that I've always said year in and year out in covering the Hoosier Crossroads Conference, the Shamrocks have never had the greatest success, but nobody ever wanted to play them either.
Right, that's right. Well, I've seen them twice now this year against Brownsburg, and then I saw their Fishers game at the stadium. And, boy, that offense, when it gets functioning, their outstanding receiver, he's going to Ball State, Mr. Reese, he's a fantastic athlete. So I'm glad to see that Westfield success. They're definitely a tough team. I think they deserve that number 1 5A ranking.
When you look at Westfield, their lone loss of the season, well, it's against the co-leaders, Fishers Tigers. It took triple overtime, and they lost by 1 point. That's how good the Shamrocks have been. You look at some of their game against Avon earlier this year. That was a game Avon probably should come away with a win. They ended up chasing an extra point late in that game, and the Shamrocks came away with a victory. Hamilton Southeastern and Noblesville follow in third with identical 4-2 records. In Southeastern, well, I talked to head coach Scott May this week. Not a happy camper after that loss to Westfield. But the Royals 4-2. Noblesville coming off of the loss to the Avon Orioles. They are also 4-2. And then you've got a pack at 3-3. That includes Avon with McCutcheon and Zionsville. And, Chris, I think one of the things that we're looking at Avon, they seem to be building at just the right time. The HCC title, well, that's probably not within their grasp. But as we get into sectionals, Coach Bless has a team that I think is going to be very dangerous.
Yeah, I was thinking that this week, Brian. We talk about these schools. We check on them each week. We've seen a lot of them play. I would not want to play Avon if I was anybody in this conference right now, especially with their defense playing so well.
After those three, then you see Brownsburg with that win, now 2-4 on the season, big win. Lafayette Jefferson remains 1-5, and the Harrison Raiders, well, we feel sorry for Harrison. They've lost, I believe, 33 in a row. They're going to play Brownsburg this week, a high Brownsburg team coming off of a win at homecoming. Unfortunately for Harrison, they're probably looking at loss 34. Last week's action saw Avon defeat Noblesville 17-11. The Bulldogs defeated Jeff 28-0. Fishers over McCutcheon 47-28. Westfield defeated Hamilton Southeastern 38-18. And Zionsville, well, they're the ones that sent Harrison to that 33rd defeat. The Eagles won 35-13. Action this week, one of the big games in the HCC. Fishers is at Zionsville. That will be a big game. Hamilton Southeastern at Noblesville, also another big game. That's kind of a rivalry game as well. A lot of people, Fishers has really taken over that regional rivalry with Southeastern. But the Millers and the Royals, they go way back. This will be a big game. The Bulldogs will host Harrison. Avon is hosting Lafayette Jefferson. And Westfield will host a very good McCutcheon team in 5A. That should be an interesting matchup. We take a look at the Mid-State Conference. Whiteland is at the top of the conference standings with a perfect 3-0 conference record, 4-2 overall. Decatur Central, they started slow. They lost their first 3 games. But Coach Justin Dixon's offense simply cannot be held down. And after going 0-3, they are now 3-1 in Mid-State Conference play. They still, I believe, have Whiteland on their schedule. Plainfield, they are 2-1 in conference play, 4-2 overall. Martinsville, 2-2. 4-2 overall. Franklin and Greenwood, 1-2 in conference play. The Grizzlies are 4-2. Big game against Plainfield this week. The Woodmen, 3-3 overall. In Mooresville, it's been a tough year for the Pioneers. They are 0-4, 0-6 overall. Last week, Decatur Central over Plainfield, 48-28. Franklin defeated Mooresville 39-9. Greenwood over Guerin Catholic 27-14. And Whiteland in a shootout over Martinsville 60-42. Games of this week, Decatur Central is at Greenwood. Franklin is at Plainfield. Roncalli is at Martinsville. And Whiteland is at Mooresville. That's the Mid-State Conference. We'll go to the Sagamore Conference. Lebanon leads the Sagamore Conference. They're undefeated on the year, 4-0 in conference play. Western Boone, 5-1 on the year, 3-1 in conference play. But Tri-West right there, a game back of Lebanon and tied with Western Boone in the conference. They are also 3-1. The Bruins 4-2 overall. And then North Montgomery and Southmont are 2-2 in the conference. Danville is 1-3 in conference play, 1-5 overall. Frankfort 1-3 in conference play, 1-5 overall. And Crawfordsville still winless on the year, 0-4 in conference play, 0-6 overall. Last week, Danville fell to Lebanon 10-2. It was North Montgomery 71, Crawfordsville 28, Tri-West 48, Frankfort 20, and Western Boone defeated Southmont 35-14. Games of this week, Crawfordsville is at Frankfort, Danville at Southmont, North Montgomery at Lebanon, and Tri-West at Western Boone.
North Montgomery at Lebanon, so I would imagine Lebanon will get that done. They could be 7-0.
And finally, we'll take a look at the West Central. South Putnam leads the West Central with a 3-0 conference record. They're 5-1 overall. Greencastle, Cascade, and Monrovia, they're all at 2-1 in conference play. And as we mentioned, the Cadets 4-2 overall. Greencastle is 5-1. Monrovia, they're 2-1 in the conference, but they're 2-4 overall. So they got a couple of big conference wins there. Cloverdale and North Putnam still looking for their first conference wins each. They're 0-3. Cloverdale does have a win on the season. They're 1-5, and North Putnam 0-6 as we enter this week's action. Last week, Greencastle over North Putnam 42-7. Sheridan over Monrovia 34-7. South Putnam blanked Cloverdale 40-0. And Speedway over Cascade 40-13. This week, Cloverdale's at Greencastle. Edgewood is at Cascade. Monrovia at North Putnam. And Mount Vernon is at South Putnam.
What did you have for Sheridan's overall record? We're used to them. They've won many state titles. They're down this year.
Sheridan, I believe, is 3-3.
Okay.
We take a look at look at Webo this week with Tri-West. Western Boone actually beat Sheridan in the opening game of the season. That was when Sheridan was the preseason number 1 in Class 1A. So a very, very good Sheridan team. Not so good this year, but always a dangerous team. So, Chris, we've got some excellent action. You and Troy Weimer, you are going to be in Brownsburg this week.
Homecoming going to be a big game. Like we said, it's a good schedule for Brownsburg this week. I expect them to win 2 straight here and get this win over Harrison at homecoming. Maybe by a big margin, I don't know. But if the defense plays like they did last week, I don't see any problem here.
You can hear that game coming up on 1610 AM XRB and XRBradio.com. You can also watch it on Audio Sports Online. As I said, Troy Weimer, Christopher Worley, they'll have all the action for you right here on XRB. Myself, I will be with the Indiana Football Hall of Famer Dave Shelburne, as we will have the Avon Orioles at the Lafayette with the Lafayette Jefferson Broncos. Pre-game for that show will be at 6:45, and the kickoff will be at 7 o'clock. And for those of you tuning in, we will have the Plainfield game this week, as Plainfield will be taking on Franklin. You can watch that game and on Audio Sports Online and also XRBradio.com. Not sure who's got the call on that game, but tune in about 7 o'clock. You'll find out just as soon as we will. It's been a great week of football. The season's winding out. It's just coming way too fast, and I believe it's only about a week or so away before we're going to have sectional draws.
Yep, we're in the last 3 games of the year for everybody. These are critical, crucial games this week. I did want to mention we want to thank our sponsor, College Prospects of America. I did get on their website this week. It's an excellent website, easy to use. Gives you a nationwide perspective of what they're doing. It's a great help to parents. CPOA.com.
We want to thank our sponsors. Our title sponsor is McDonald's, also College Prospects of America, and also BMO Harris Bank. I want to thank our guests this week, Avon head football coach Mark Bless. Our College Prospects of America Athlete of the Week was Mack Duffin. Special thanks go to my co-host Christopher Worley this week. I'm Brian Scott. Thanks for tuning in to the McDonald's Hendricks County Sports Show. Next week, we will be at the Brownsburg McDonald's on Green Street. We'll tape that show from 7 to 8. Hope to see you all there. Until next time, so long, everybody.